Hello, I'm Thomas Walker, and today I'm going to be talking about how to think rationally. This comes naturally to a lot of people, so I'll spend less time going over um, terms and definitions, and more time highlighting examples showing how it actually works. So, in order to construct a rational thought, the first thing you need to have is knowledge or presuppositions. These presuppositions are called premises, and your premises are things that you assume either for the sake of argument or things that you actually believe. So the first example we have here is that Socrates is a man and that all men are mortal. The premises have to be linked in terms of subject matter, otherwise you can't form a coherent thought. So imagine for a second, instead of number two, instead of saying all men are mortal, I said ice cream is yummy. Socrates being a man has nothing to do with ice cream and how tasty it is, so you can't put those two ideas together to form any sort of conclusion or coherent thought. But given as it is right now, we can form a coherent thought. Actually, two of them. For every set of premises you have that are connected, you can form two conclusions. The first one you can probably see coming just by reading the premises is that Socrates is immortal. And the other one is that Socrates is not mortal, or that he is immortal. These two statements are necessarily in contradiction with each other, and that means that only one of them can be true at a time. You can't have both of them be true at the same time or both of them be false at the same time. That's what it means to have statements that are, or conclusions that are in contradiction with each other. So I'd like to spend the remaining time highlighting a specific example, particularly one that's become a really big deal recently, in recent years, and was actually a pretty significant issue in the recent presidential election. So, boom. Donald Trump, abortion foe, eyes punishment for women and then recants it. So in this particular instance, Trump was subject to an interview on MSNBC, and he was asked if it was made illegal for women to get abortions. Right, here it is. If the procedure is banned in the United States, women who seek abortions would be subject to some kind of punishment. That's in the first line. He received a whole lot of backlash from both the Democrat Party and the Republican Party for making that statement. 3 hours after the interview, he recanted his statement. And he went back on it, probably for the sake of political expedience. What's really interesting here is the third paragraph. In this case, Mr. Trump also ran afoul of conservative doctrine, with opponents of abortion rights immediately castigating him for suggesting that those who receive abortions, and not merely those who perform them, should be punished if the practice is outlawed. So a lot of the people that were being really critical of Trump when he issued this statement, or, well, not really issued a statement, but answered a question in an interview on MSNBC, was that he wanted to punish women who violated the law, essentially. If abortion was made to be against the law, then he would look after punishments for those women, and not just doctors or clinics that are giving out or selling abortions illegally. And most of the people on the conservative side who are opponents of abortion rights are generally religious people who are against abortion on religious or moral grounds. So I'd like to take a look at exactly like how this argument is structured and what its implications are. So what most people believe, if they are opponents of abortion rights and on the conservative right, is that abortion is considered to be an illicit killing. You can't really say it's murder, because murder by definition is a killing that is against the law, but we don't have any legislation explicitly forbidding abortion yet. So abortion isn't murder. It's by definition not murder. So for the sake of assuming to adhere to this conservative religious doctrine, we'll just say it's an illicit killing, an immoral killing. Next premise that's given in the article and by a lot of the opponents of Mr. Trump in this case, a lot of these chairwomen of pro-life organizations and his political opponents, including Ted Cruz and John Kasich, were saying that women who purchase abortions should not be punished. So you can draw you can draw two conclusions that are necessarily in contradiction with each other from these two premises. The first one is that women who purchase illicit killings should be punished, and the other one is that they should not be punished. In order to highlight this, I'd like to also drop another example on you. Basically, if you have a man who gives money to a hitman to kill a child, then both of these men would be considered accomplices in a murder of a child or committing infanticide. And this would be considered an illicit killing of sort, also a murder. But what's important to highlight in this case is that if a man purchases a killing, an illicit killing, then he is to blame, not because he was physically involved, because he wasn't, he hired someone else to do it, but because he was accomplice. He initiated the chain of events that led to that event happening. In a similar sort of case, if a woman hires an abortion clinic or an abortion doctor to get rid of her unwanted unborn child, or fetus, or whatever you want to call it, then the man is the one who should be punished, or not necessarily the man, the one providing the treatment or the abortion or what have you. And according to the article, the woman would be let go. So no punishment for her at all. But if this case of a man purchasing a killing with his money on the left, if that's a case of an illicit killing being purchased, then why aren't the outcomes the same here? And this is why a lot of people can't really take pro-life people seriously, is because they're inconsistent in their thought. They'll break people up into categories and then decide who should actually suffer the punishments of the law and then who shouldn't. So in this particular case from the article, all these people saying that abortion is morally wrong, but the women still shouldn't be punished. These are the kinds of people that would think that the man on the left is guilty of purchasing an illicit killing by hiring a hitman to kill a child. But in order to be consistent in their own thought, they would also have to think the same thing of the case on the right, of the woman purchasing an abortion. And they don't. It's an example of inconsistent thinking. It's not necessarily a contradiction, but it is an example of either being complicit in some people killing other people illicitly, or thinking that certain people should get away with the same things that other people can't get away with. Just a non-universal justice, I suppose, is what they're really guilty of here. And that's it. So to go over the steps again, you basically have to you have to establish two related premises. You can draw two conclusions from them that are in contradiction. Being able to analyze arguments that take place in the modern day is important for being able to understand real life issues and being able to discern how people are actually thinking and what they want to see in the world. Because if the pro-life crowd is really telling the truth, that they believe that abortion is illicit killing, then if they're okay with this over here on the right, how long before they're also okay with this here on the left? Because in their minds, it's the same thing. If they believe that purchasing an abortion is an illicit killing, then it's a slippery slope. It's like, how long are we going to just let things like this last? So it's important to understand how these arguments are structured in the modern day, and that's how you learn to understand things. And that's it. Thanks for listening.